This is Raising Tech, your guide to understanding the role technology plays in your community, where to invest to transform culture, and how to bring your team and residents along the journey. Sponsored by Parasol Alliance, your senior living tech partner. Tune in to explore the latest tech trends, dive into hot topics, and hear from industry experts, community leaders, and innovative vendors shaping the senior living tech landscape. Welcome back to another episode of Raising Tech. I am so excited for this conversation today. I've got Nick Snyder, the Health Information's System Director for TLC Management. TLC Management has earned a reputation of being a leading healthcare consultant in Indiana and Florida. After its incorporation in 1987, TLC began their mission to build the business by applying traditional values along with key principles of leadership and a quest for quality service. And this successful mission has been implemented throughout TLC's business portfolio. And I'm also joined by Justin Spurk, the CEO of House Mom. And House Mom enhances communication in senior living by automating care updates, improving efficiency, ensuring compliance, and engaging families, ultimately boosting care quality and reducing risks. So, gentlemen, a place I like to start with all of our new guests, and we'll start with you first, Nick. Can you just share a bit about your background and what led you to work in senior living?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us. Great to be here today. I've been with TLC for coming on 9 years now. I am a nurse. I'm a registered nurse. Started out in a hospital in the acute care setting and was there for a couple years. Was actually getting ready to move and looking for a new position that would be closer to home and got into long-term care that way. Went into a health information systems role, which is at the time was newer for nursing, and got into this IT nursing clinical world that's new and upcoming and booming now. So I've been doing that for the last 9 years. So it's been really good.
Oh, I love to hear that. And I love that transition and how you're adding like technology to that care approach, right? I think it's so important within senior living. Kudos to you on that. And then, Justin, same question to you. What led you to build House Mom and work in the senior living industry?
Yeah, I think it's always been in the cards. Both my parents are 20 plus year veterans in the senior care industry. I'm actually married to a social worker that has applied her trade in senior care for the last 18 years. I've spent the better part of my career in some way, shape, or form in a sales and marketing capacity within healthcare. But at the end of the day, when I learned about the organization and the problem that it was looking to solve, I felt like it would be a fantastic fit. Being someone who has loved ones in the community as well, I recognized the issues and wanted an opportunity to build something from the ground up.
I love that. And I can definitely applaud the entrepreneurial journey. I've been there, done that, and looks like we both have lost all of our hair throughout the process, Justin. So it's been a fun ride for sure. And I know TLC Management and House Mom are working together today. And I guess the first question that I have about that, is to you, Nick. How did you guys come together to enhance care communication within your communities? And wondering what some of the challenges you were hoping to solve for that.
Yeah, so we have to go back a few years. We are back in about 2017, 2018 when we first connected with Hal's mom. And what we were looking for was a way to give time and care back to our residents and back to our staff. So the key focus was how can we get residents nursing care and how can we get nurses away from answering phone calls, from spending time away from direct resident care. So that was the solution that we originally looked for and what Hal's mom was offering at the time. Now, over the years, that has grown into communication, it's grown into sharing different parts of the clinical record and on with those different opportunities. But it was really about giving the care back to the patients and then giving time back to our nurses.
Yeah, I love that. So it definitely seems from Nick, it seems like you have that problem, identifying a solution. And then Justin, I'm just curious, what were you seeing from your side?
I think to Nick's point, it's really been about number one, how can we ease that burden on the caregivers at the communities? And number two, how can we help meet the expectations of the customers customers, the families, and the way the communication is being provided.
I think it's so important along this journey. And how are we able to check up on our loved ones and making sure that they're getting the best quality of care? And I'm wondering, and anybody can take this, whether it's from your side of things, Justin, or what you're seeing within your communities, Nick, how have you seen like digital care coordination apps change the way families stay connected with their loved ones in some of these senior living settings?
Transparency is huge in the industry. Trying to engage family members, we're finding more and more that families, residents even want to have direct access to the information, to as much clinical data as they can. Providing that transparency and building those relationships is huge. I know Justin can probably speak more about it, but we have families that are requesting apps or something that's going to provide them that transparency when they're selecting a nursing home to go into or a skilled nursing facility to go into. So people are wanting that data. That's a huge part of it on building the customer relationship.
Yeah, and I think what I've seen too, and Nick, it seems like you've identified this well before the pandemic, that understanding of transparency. I think what I saw was so many people wanting to check in on their family members, their loved ones, and a lot of these people didn't have systems set up and were catching up to try and do that. It's kudos to you guys for being proactive and doing that. And I'm wondering from your side, Justin, I imagine you guys hear heartwarming stories from families almost every day to really showcase that impact. I'm wondering if there's anything that has stuck out to you during your time with House Mom that you can really showcase that your product is and your service is helping.
Yeah, I think to begin with, communication and the way people have communicated has changed significantly over just the past 5 years, 10 years, if we want to go back that far. But yeah, we have just a multitude of stories and feedback that come through our platform of before using the app, I always felt disconnected. I didn't know what was going on with mom or dad in the community. And it's always been difficult for me being 3 states away to stay updated on the care that's being provided. And I have to make a phone call. I'm not able to go in, etc. And I'll use the same analogy that I use pretty much on a daily basis. And it's reduced to ridiculous, but the reality is, if you're a pet owner, you can take your dog to a doggy daycare, and within the first 30 minutes, you know how many treats it's had, its favorite toy, what dog it's playing with the most, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we need to be able to provide that type of information to these family members and to really meet their expectations as far as what they're looking for and how they want to know what their loved one do in the community. I can think of a number of different cases, and one in particular, I think it's an interesting use case. We have an elderly gentleman that has a younger son with a multitude of issues. He's living in a community, and this gentleman utilizes our app to stay up to date on the care that's being provided. So when he's going to separate doctor's appointments, et cetera, he's able to pull up the app, show all of the care that's being provided, the new medications from different physicians that he's visiting, et cetera. And it's his way to help manage the care that's being provided to his son. I think at the end of the day, it is that transparency and the ability to build a level of trust that quality of care is being provided.
Yeah, I think to your point, right? Transparency builds that trust. And even if it's not the greatest news, right? I'd rather knowing about that, sharing that, understanding that versus just flying blind. Like even thinking about my own journey with my grandmother, which granted, my dad and my uncles were more involved in kind of that family caregiving, but the only way they could get updates was by calling her directly and asking how things were going. Like they did not have this kind of insight of what was happening and what was going on. So whether they were visiting or calling was getting the insight. And it was just, and of course she was lived to be 93. So everything that she knew what was going on, she couldn't properly share that information with us at times. There was definitely like a different take on it at times. I know there were times I would go and visit her and she would thought I was the eye doctor at some points. I just had my glasses on, so she did not recognize me, but it's all good. And when we think about these family caregivers, right? So maybe even like outside of the senior living community directly, Justin, how else have you seen this like automation and care communication really help ease their burden? And I'm wondering if you've received any feedback from those using that technology.
Oh, yeah. I think, again, at the onset, the idea is to how can we connect all the key stakeholders in this particular residence care? And we get feedback all the time of, oh, hey, I've noticed this new medication has been prescribed to dad. Just an FYI, we tried this 3 years ago and he had significant side effects. So it's actually impacting the care that's being provided. No one knows these residents better than their loved ones. And it's an opportunity for them to be involved in the decision-making process and the care that's being provided. I think that kind of speaks to the question there of how it is impacting them from a day-to-day standpoint, knowing that they have access to this information and can stay clued in as to the care that's being provided.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think knowledge is power in this situation, and at least getting that and looking at it over a period of time makes sense. And my next question is for you, Nick, because I know healthcare regulations are very strict. I'm wondering like how you're thinking about compliance while streamlining communication. And I'm also like, from your perspective, how have you seen How's Mom improve your operational efficiency? A couple different ways you could take that question here.
Yeah, so it's when you think about How's Mom or an app like How's Mom, it's from our perspective, it's a three-headed animal. You look at the resident care, you look at the staff, how is it impacting staff, and then the compliance piece of it. So those are what we focus on. So with the compliance piece, we're providing information that we are required to provide in most cases. The Cures Act is one of those things that we utilize How's Mom for. The other part of it will be the notifications. We're starting to roll out automated notifications. If, let's say, somebody had a weight change or there was something in the building that happened, we can directly push out or automatically push out this notification that goes to the family member, says, hey, either log into the app and see this message or contact the facility, whatever it would be. And then we have a progress note that goes right into the medical record. So from a compliance standpoint, it's helping us significantly with notification. And then we have that audit trail that says, hey, this is when we sent this out. This is when the family reached back out to the building and got that information from us. So that is a big game changer for nursing and for compliance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love how it's integrated to those various platforms, just so if you're creating those updates and making that. And I love the analogy you had talked about the three-headed monster there and how you're thinking through that. And I'm wondering, and this is a no surprise to anybody listening to this that is familiar with senior living or really any industry out there about these staffing shortages. And I'm just wondering, as we're thinking through this, Nick, and you touched on it, but I'm just wondering kind of your vision or how you see this happening today. I know you said you're just launching some of this stuff, but like, how do you think some of these technology-driven care updates can help alleviate some of those staffing pressures and improve those workflows?
Yeah, the notifications part is fairly new as far as the automated, but we've been using How's Mom to give time back to the nurses from the very beginning. Like I said, that was the kind of the driving factor there. How do we build a transparent relationship with family and how do we provide time back to nurses so that we're providing the best possible patient care that we can or resident care that we can? So in giving that time back to the nurses where they're not sitting maybe on a phone call for 15 minutes or a half an hour or longer, depending on what they're talking about, they're referencing the app and saying, hey, if you want to know your mom's blood pressure or her blood sugar every morning, you can look at the app and you don't even have to call us. It's always there and it's always available for you. So that phone call is eliminated then, giving time back to the nurse who then can focus on what we actually want them to focus on, which is resident care.
I always think about automations, AI, all this fun stuff, right? Like, how do we automate the mundane and elevate the meaningful, right? And if we can maximize time being spent with the residents, and when I think of senior living, right, like at the end of the day, that's what we should be doing. So if we can automate some of this other administrative paperwork, some of this documentation in the background, and I look at that as like the most. That's where I see technology going. I know a lot of people are scared of these like humanoid robots. They're going to come in and do all this stuff. But I think to how you guys are using it, that's where I see technology, especially in the short term, being utilized and making that happen. And as we're thinking about innovations, and I'll ask this question to start with Justin. I think Nick, getting your take on it too would be great. But looking ahead, like what trends do you see shaping the future of digital caregiving solutions? And what are you excited about when you're looking at some of those enhancements, Justin?
Yeah, so I think really it goes back to how much of that burden can we really eliminate, and what can we utilize from a technology standpoint to increase the communication, alleviate some of the administrative pressures, and just really provide more time to care. I think when we talk about eliminating those phone calls, if you look at any of the studies out there, they anywhere from 17 to 30 minutes time on the phone. Now, that's pretty significant when you might have 100 residents and maybe 300 family members. There are a lot of phone calls that come in day to day. Really, I'm excited about some of the AI things that we're working on currently. I'd love to be able to share that, but I think we're a little too early on in the process. But there's some significant things that we can do from an AI standpoint with just capturing those incoming communications and running them through different AI to highlight key phrases, etc. We can automate what a CMS standard response would be for example. Those are some of the things that I'm really excited about to be able to eliminate hours of work from clinical, social services, administrative staff that would go into responding to some of these communications. We're starting to develop pieces of the platform that can automate that entire process and we're a matter of seconds. To me, that's the really exciting thing. It's not to eliminate that personal touch in any way, because that's really important in this industry. But to your point, to answer the phone 4 or 5 times a day to discuss what mom or dad or brother or sister's weight might be, we can provide that as it is today without changing any of the workflows that is currently going on in the building.
Yeah, I love that. And then I'll ask pretty much the same question to you, Nick. You've got such a unique perspective being an RN. Now I'm this health information system director. And what are you excited about when you're looking at or thinking about innovation, technology, digital care coordination tools? Like, what are you excited about, or what trends do you see taking place for the future here?
Yeah, so the automated notifications are huge. We've talked about that for several years now, and it's finally starting to come into a reality to where we can have documentation that something happened and it automatically goes out and notifies the family. I think that is great, and I think we're going to see more and more of that. One of the big pieces is how do we do this without disrupting the nursing workflow, which is what Justin was talking about, and that's huge because the more streamlined it is, the easier it is on the nursing staff, the better these products are. And when you have something that automatically, based on something that they already have documented in the chart, generates that message, the notification is done, our progress note is done. That's awesome. And the nurses love that to where and I'll say it again, but they're right back to the care that they want to provide to the patient. So that's a direction that I see it going and really excited about that in the future.
You've been working with a digital care platform like House Mom for more than a few years now. And I'm just wondering, like, for senior living providers considering working with House Mom or maybe another digital care coordination tool, like, what key factors should they evaluate before implementation? And just also wondering if there's anything you've learned from your own experience or TLC management's experience that others can benefit from.
Yeah, I think you really want to look at one, what's going to make you compliant? What do you need to be sharing to be compliant? You want to look at that relationship because, like I said, this is a huge opportunity to build that relationship with family members, to be transparent when they know, hey, not that we're ever trying to hide anything, but when they can jump into the chart and see these items, family members love that. So I'd be looking at those things. And the last thing is, how do we not disrupt our current workflow? We mentioned earlier, staffing shortages are real. And the more that we take away from the nursing care, the more unhappy the nurses are and the less quality care our residents are getting. Making sure that it's not disrupting that workflow, that it's easy, it's simple to implement, and you have a great rep like we have in Justin. So
Yeah.
that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I love that. And hey, it's great when your rep can be the CEO. That's awesome.
That's right.
Um, yeah. And so the question to you, Justin, I know you guys are working with more people than just TLC management. I imagine you've seen some trends across different providers. And I'm just wondering, like, when does it go really well with an organization that can really embrace a technology like House Mom and be off to the races? And then I guess on the other side of that question, you could take it whatever way you want. What are providers doing that might not be as successful with something like that?
No, that's a great question, Matt. I think number one, where we have a lot of success is those providers that understand that there's a better way to communicate. Number one, they've taken ownership of it may not necessarily be a problem, but there is a better way to communicate and it can really provide a positive impact for your overall organization. But again, getting back to the staffing, these communities are really tasked to do an impossible job with the number of things that they have to communicate, the number of individuals that they have to communicate to while providing high quality of care and make sure that everything is documented and they're compliant. There is a lot that goes into that. We're most successful in those organizations that really take ownership of, hey, look, we're trying to do the best that we can, but we understand there might be an opportunity out here to provide a better service to our residents, our patients, and their families. Those are the ones that are, I think, really take hold of the software that's being provided, the technology that's being provided to them. And then the organizations that we have more of a difficult time with, I'll say they are looking to just quickly check a box, if that kind of makes sense. They're looking for just a quick solution that I can implement really quick. I can check this box and move on and be done with it. But really, we're talking about a cultural shift in the way that you're communicating. The industry, for the most part, they communicate in person and by phone. And we've had over 80,000 plus end users on our platform. These are family members that have adopted our app and are receiving communications through the platform. And we can tell you today that about 63% of those individuals, their primary preferred method of communication is texting. So, when you think about all those organizations that are making the phone calls all day long, family members are having to go in, it's not a satisfactory experience. I think those are the ones that are looking for, I just want to check the compliance box, or I just want to make sure that we can send mass messaging out or something of that nature. But really, at the end of the day, their customers want that transparency. They want access to this information because, frankly, they can get it anywhere else in their day-to-day life.
I love that. Yeah, it's so important. And yeah, even through my thinking through my own preferred level of communication, like text is the easiest way to get a hold of me, or at least stay
Yeah.
knowledgeable of what's happening. And we were even seeing it recently with voicemails are now being put into text so people can get it that way. So it seems to be the default way to accept information and stay on top of it. Granted, don't tell my wife that 'cause she's got 100 unopened or unread text message. I don't know how she survives it, but that's her own problem. And then, yeah, so this is for either of you. Any other thoughts you want to share, whether about digital care coordination, How's Mom, TLC management? Any other thoughts from either of you?
Yeah, I think that we're going to see this area continue to grow. I'm so glad that we got into this with How's Mom back in 2017, 2018, prior to even, like we mentioned earlier, the pandemic, where we used automated messages for a year or more as part of the platform. I just see that it's not going away and it's going to continue to evolve and to grow. And we've seen that. And TLC is happy to be a part of that with Hal's Mom to be able to guide and say, hey, this is what we're seeing coming. Can you guys build it? And so far, Hal's Mom has been able to do that. It's definitely going to be the way of the future. So I'm glad that we have a solution in place currently that addresses that.
Yeah, no, Nick, I appreciate that. And I think that was somewhat along the lines of what I was going to go with as well, is that I've spent about 18 years in the medical industry, not always in senior care. On average, for something to become quote unquote standard of care in the medical world, you're talking 14 to 16 years. And this form of communication is not going anywhere. We're only going to build upon the foundation that's already there. And I think that the last thing I'll say is we have an intern that works with us. And I had a conversation with him about 2 weeks ago, and he's 23 years old. And I said, hey, his name's Matt as well. How many
Great name.
phone calls do you make a week? And he's like, ooh, maybe two. I think that's just a perfect indication. So that kind of got me down the rabbit hole of looking into how is the younger generation communicating? They aren't making phone calls. So there's already been a number of studies out there, and more people are getting away from that verbal communication to where it's quick access to the information. I think there's a good and bad to that, but I think we're going to see a continual surge to being able to provide and get this information at our fingertips, whether it be through an app or push notifications, etc. I think that for me is the biggest piece here is this isn't going anywhere, only going to continue to grow in this area.
Yeah, I would agree. I think these communication platforms making life easier for the families, the caregivers, the frontline staff, whatever we can do from a vendor and provider perspective and setting them up for success will help to, again, I'll go back to this quote that ChatGPT gave me a few weeks ago of automating the mundane, elevating the meaningful, and maximizing the time we can have with the residents, which at the end of the day is what senior living is built for. And then final question for each of you. Nick, where can people learn more about TLC management?
Yeah, the easiest way is probably to go to our website, tlcmgmt.com. We're in Indiana, Ohio, Florida, so a lot of different campuses that you can get to from visiting our homepage there.
Sounds great. Thank you. Yeah. And then Justin, same question for you. Where can people learn more about How's Mom?
Yeah, likewise, I think the website's probably the easiest method at housemom.net. We're also on Facebook and LinkedIn. We have communities across 36 states here in the US, coast to coast. As it stands right now, got a handful up in Canada, but welcome any conversations.
Great. Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you for your time today and I always love seeing successful collaboration. It seems like you guys are doing it. So kudos to you guys. So thank you.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Appreciate you having us on.
Thanks, Matt. It's been a pleasure.
You can find us online at raisingtechpodcast.com, where you can see all of our episodes and contact us to provide feedback or submit an episode idea. We are on social media everywhere at Raising Tech Podcast. If you enjoy Raising Tech, please leave us a review and share with a friend. Music is an original production by Tim Riesig, one of our very own Parasol Alliance employees. As always, thank you for listening.